Hey, everybody, this is Joe Joseph, and this is the DailySheeple.com's Daily News Brief. Let me start out by saying, wow, I mean, there's been a lot in the last couple of days that have come out with regards to the inauguration of Donald Trump. And there's been some interesting things that have gone down, say, in the last week or two, that have called into question, you know, the safety of this whole event. It's kind of interesting, yet the FBI and Department of Homeland Security say there's absolutely no threats at all. Hey, no problem. Well, my good friends Aaron and Melissa Dykes over at TrueStreamMedia.com recently put out a video, last-minute change in security at an inauguration reminiscent of JFK and Dealey Plaza. Very interesting. It says, without explanation and just a week before inauguration, President Obama has suddenly announced he's removing the Major General in charge of the D.C. National Guard who helped plan and was set to oversee event security that day, effective 12:01 p.m., right in the middle of the ceremony, the very minute Donald Trump is sworn in for president. Now, the termination is unprecedented and out of decorum with such a high state function taking place. And of course, it raises security concerns and about the whole, you know, all the vulnerabilities, potential gaps in security. You know, we're not saying here at the Daily Sheeple that anything's going to happen, but I mean, this is kind of weird. It is. It's very weird. Zero Hedge reported the same thing. Listen to this. This is Tyler Durden saying it doesn't make sense to can the general in the middle of an active deployment. So true. This according to D.C. Council Chairman Phil Mendelson. That's his comments after he found out that Major General Errol Schwartz, who heads the D.C. National Guard and is an integral part of the inauguration, has been ordered removed from command effective January 20th at 12:01 p.m. This is interesting because even the Washington Post picked up on this. And this does classify as a special event, national special security event. And so while thousands of his troops are deployed, 8,000 so far is what I've heard, to help protect the nation's capital during the inauguration, this guy is going to be out. It says during the inauguration, this is according to Washington Post, Schwartz would command not only the members of the D.C. Guard, but also an additional 5,000 unarmed troops sent in from across the country to help. He said, this is Schwartz's own quote. He said, my troops will be on the street. Schwartz, who turned 65 in October, says, I'll see them off, but I won't be able to welcome them back to the armory. He said that he would, quote, never plan to leave a mission in the middle of a battle. Now, Schwartz was appointed to head the Guard by President George W. Bush in 2008, and he maintained that post through the Obama administration. It's crazy. Now, unlike in states where the governor appoints the National Guard commander, in the district, that duty falls on the president. Now, Schwartz said that he had not been told why he was asked to step down. This was his response. He said, quote, I'm a soldier, noting that he was following orders and had no regrets. I'm a presidential appointee, therefore the president has the power to remove me. Sounds like a good drone response, don't you think? Now, is this just another part of Obama's smooth transition, or is something even more sinister at work? It's a good question because if you notice, there's a ton of protesting that's set to go down if the people show up, which I'm sure they will because, boy, there are a lot of people that are really bent over the fact that Donald Trump won the election. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. I can't say this enough, folks. I really can't say this enough. But all of these protesters, everybody that was against Donald Trump, you don't need to be protesting Donald Trump. You need to be protesting the Democratic National Committee because they're the ones that shanghaied your victory. It wasn't Donald Trump. They're the ones that decided to put Hillary Clinton up against Donald Trump instead of Bernie Sanders against Donald Trump. And if they let Bernie Sanders run head-to-head against Trump, Trump would have got slaughtered. Absolutely slaughtered. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but I think in their hearts they know that that's the truth. Whether or not you believe in socialism or you're a libertarian, it doesn't matter what. Had Bernie Sanders been allowed to run a fair race, he would have won. I mean, I don't think anybody can call that into question. But he was shanghaied. And so people that are out there protesting the Trump inauguration, again, I think your anger is misdirected. And believe me, I'm no Trump supporter. I can't trust an oligarch in there as much as I can trust a socialist. So it was kind of like, ooh, this is really bad. Now, one activist group out there that plans on protesting took out a full-page ad in the New York Times. Listen to what it says. It says, quote, thousands of activists, journalists, scientists, entertainers, and other prominent voices took out a full-page ad to make clear their rejection of Donald Trump and Vice President-elect Mike Pence with a simple message, no. This is what it says. Stop the Trump and Pence regime before it starts. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. And it has a list of signatories headed by Cornel West, author Alice Walker, Chase Iron Eyes of the Standing Rock Sioux. They have Bill Ayers. Oh, yeah, there you go. Got Saul Williams, Mark Lamont of CNN, and Carl Dix of the Communist Party. Say what you will, but they have a website as well, refusefascism.org. Yes, because it doesn't matter that perhaps Donald Trump was legitimately elected. What should matter is that Bernie Sanders was taken out. Especially, when you look at like Carl Dix, Communist Party, Bill Ayers, why would you not be pissed off at the DNC? I just can't understand it. But of course, this just goes to show you more and more that it's really not about the facts. It's more along the lines of don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, which is what we see quite often in the mainstream media. And, could there be some sort of an attempt on Donald Trump? I don't know. I can say that he's certainly not making friends with the CIA. And to make matters worse, he's not making any friends with the mainstream media. We know that he put CNN in place last week. And now the Trump administration, according to The Guardian, is saying maybe we're going to allow radio hosts and bloggers to be included at the White House for the briefings. And of course, that's probably got the mainstream media's undies in a twist. Listen to this. It says talk radio hosts and bloggers could be invited to official White House press briefings once the Trump administration takes office under a highly irregular proposal being floated that may also remove briefings from the West Wing, because you know how prestigious it is for somebody in the mainstream media to be anointed as a White House press corps type of guy. Now, Press Secretary Sean Spicer, that's for Trump, said Sunday that due to off-the-chart interest in the new administration, the president-elect was considering moving the briefings from the James S. Brady press briefing room, which has been used by presidents to address the media since 1970, that rich tradition of 46 years, to a venue with a greater capacity. And according to that would be the old executive building just west of the White House. Because there they said they can hold 500 to 600 people. And right now only 200 seats are available that make up the White House press corps. And so that is why they want to move it. And why not? Why can't bloggers and radio hosts join in on the fun? Because, and this is the way things are. People do not like to evolve and adapt as time goes on. whether it is a media, the mainstream media has now become basically obsolete. And people hold on to that tradition. The tradition of, I want to read the newspaper every night. I like my newspaper. Or, the tradition of, we need to send our children to brick and mortar public schools because that's the right thing to do because I did that. And because my grandfather did that. My father did it. And everybody else in my family, this is how we've done it. When in reality, it's obsolete. Because anybody that has access to the internet has access to all that and more. They have access to basically, it's a human knowledge database. What do we need teachers for? Think about that. Babysitters? That's basically what it is. So this, to me, would be a no-brainer. I think this would be great. And talk about opening things up for so many things. But you won't see that. I mean, if you do, I just wonder what the backlash is going to be. And why not? I mean, according to the Morning Star, which is a socialist newspaper out of the UK, a Morning Star for peace and socialism, they pointed out a great fact. 8 guys own as much as half of all humans. 8. I've used a statistic here on the Daily News Brief to highlight just how small the control freaks cabal actually is, right? 6 people own the entire mainstream media. 6. I mean, that's just crazy. 6 people own the entire mainstream media. Let me check this out. MediaDeceit.com. It's a great site. It's run by my friend, Tim Watts. Check it out. I'm going to go over some things now where the mainstream media failed and why I think it's a great idea that we get bloggers in, that we get radio hosts in, that we get independent media in every nook and cranny as we possibly can. Check this out. One of the first documented cases in recent history was the 1975 Church Commission report exposing the real danger of the CIA. Check this out. The highly damning report was the first to expose the dirty laundry of the CIA and its deep bag of dirty tricks, in particular its assassination program known as Operation Phoenix and its illegal operation on U.S. domestic soil. The CIA was never tasked for domestic duty. Never. The responsibility has always belonged to the FBI. The CIA was outed in this damning report for its political assassinations as well as its illegal covert activities at home. Now, among its domestic program was a covert plan called Operation Mockingbird, which revealed the CIA's deep undercover connections with the mainstream U.S. media. As a matter of fact, from 1946 through 1948, it took, in just 2 years, think about this, 2 years, 2. The CIA did as much damage to undermine the country as if we had lost the war. Some feel as a result of the post-war Nazi penetration into the U.S. intel infrastructure, we did lose. And it's also interesting that the agency turned to George H.W. Bush in its darkest hour to lead the CIA out of the Church Commission's scorching spotlight. Bush had steadfastly claimed that he had no prior CIA involvement before becoming its director. Hard to believe the CIA would hire a rookie to lead the investigation at the one time the agency had been caught with its hands in the dark ops cookie jar. Think about that. Why? Yeah, well, I have no experience. Read my lips, no new taxes. That's right. Yeah, because that's what they do. There's a lot of evidence, by the way, to show that Bush was indeed a longtime CIA asset as early as the Bay of Pigs. Former President Harry S. Truman once said of the CIA, quote, "I never would have agreed to the formulation of the CIA back in 47 if I had known that it would become the American Gestapo." After the murder of John F. Kennedy, Truman wrote a public op-ed saying, quite frankly in the letter, quote, "I think it's become necessary to take another look at the purpose and operation of our CIA." Then, of course, we had the fake right-handed Osama bin Laden video, which purported to show Osama taking credit for 9/11. It was an obvious fake because His FBI wanted poster and video records all show that Osama bin Laden was left-handed. Yet the man in the alleged confession video gestured, drank, ate, and even wrote with his right hand. Yeah. Then, of course, we were sold the Persian Gulf War lie, and I'm talking about the first Iraq War, where the media sold the war rather than question the story about the Iraqis kicking over Kuwaiti baby incubators. The girl who testified as an alleged eyewitness was actually the daughter of a Kuwaiti ambassador. And the story about the babies? A deliberate lie. The brainchild of a Washington, D.C. PR firm known as Hill and Knowlton. CBS 60 Minutes reported on the story only after it became public. And this story should have been uncovered much earlier, but the media failed to do its due diligence to check into the validity of the false incubator reports. And if the first Iraq War wasn't bad enough, the second Iraq War was certainly bad. And it was planned long before 9/11. Bush wanted the war with Saddam Hussein. Of course, weapons inspector Hans Blix was pulled out of Iraq after finding no weapons of mass destruction. Joe Wilson and Scott Ritter also said no WMDs, yet the U.S. alleged that yellow cake uranium from Africa was being shipped to Iraq. Of course, they never found them. They never found any WMDs. And the U.S. also tried to tie Saddam to 9/11, even though there were no ties. And even years later, my friends, the Bush administration admitted in a press conference that Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. Yet to this day, a greater portion of the U.S. populace still thinks Iraq was involved, proving that the pre-war brainwashing worked perfectly as planned. You had the Kennedy assassination lone gunman myth that was pushed by the mainstream media back and to the left, back and to the left. I mean, come on. We got CIA document 1035-960. It says, speaking of the infamous Warren Commission, the media never talked about this particular document, the instruction on how to combat doubters of the official Warren Commission report and how the media should cover it. It's also, I should note, from this document that the term conspiracy theory was born. And this document, my friends, is considered as a foundation for covering the sins of government. So 1035-960. Check that out. We also had 2 ignored presidential warnings. Of course, mainstream media not going to report on anything like this. You had Dwight Eisenhower that told us to beware of the military-industrial complex. And of course, then you had President Kennedy's famous speech talking about the criminal cabals and secret organizations that had infiltrated government. And I can go on, but these are just a few examples of where the Fourth Estate has failed us and why it's so important that we, as citizen reporters, as independent, as alternative media, really ratchet up the heat and provide the accountability that's lacking. Why? Because nothing is going to change when you have the kids in Congress policing themselves. And that's what they are, friends. They are children. That's what happens when you get old. Yeah, what's the average age of senators are out there? They're like 85 now, right? Because they're career politicians. It's what they do. Once they're in, they're in. They very seldomly get booted out. But as you get older, it's kind of like a bell curve. You start going on that downward slide until eventually you're in diapers again. You started out in diapers, you end in diapers. The same thing with your mentality. You were once sharp as a tack. You're born, you kind of just like taking everything in. You're learning. You don't know too much. You got to be fed. Got to have your diaper changed, all that stuff. Not very independent. Yeah, then as you get older, you become more independent. Well, as you get older, you become less independent. Same thing. So we have Congress, which is basically, a bunch of children because they're on the downward slide, running us into the ground. We need to provide that accountability. And that's why at the Daily Sheeple, friends, we do. And that's why the mainstream media and those fact checkers out there don't like us. I'm Joe Joseph. This was the DailySheeple.com Daily News Brief, and I'll have one again for you tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.